Welcome to Grace Among Us, the podcast where we unearth the many faces and places of grace and share stories of the power of grace in our human lives. Our desire is that this will inspire you to see grace in your own life and share it with others.
Good day, good people. I'm Ebony Gilbert, and I am here with Carrie to discuss grace today. Thank you for joining us. My name, again, is Ebony Gilbert. I work in the healthcare industry by day, and I get to hang out with you guys in my spare time. So looking forward to this conversation today. Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would, Ebony. Thank you. My name is Carrie Adcock. I'm a sustained success coach, and I help high achievers make space and enjoy the ride. And in my spare time, in my favorite time, I get to hang out with Ebony and everyone here and talk about grace. So let's get to it. I think, as we've said before, we do not prepare these. This is very much in the moment. And, that is where grace is. It's in the present. It's not, I can see remnants of it in the past, and I'm sure it's coming in the future. However, this is where it lives. So, one of the questions was, when does grace not look like grace? Or, some definitions of grace are like this, they're very positive and beautiful. And like, I can get into the idea that grace is like relief and good things come out of it, and it all looks pretty, and I can almost go towards unicorns and rainbows. And sometimes grace doesn't look like that at all. So what do you think about that, Ebony?
I agree. My mind is going to the scripture in the Bible that says sufficient. Something, I'm going to butcher it, but basically you need a daily sufficient is the grace for today. So when I need grace for a situation that's ongoing and it's not going to be resolved today, I can get very frustrated with today I didn't get the answer I need. And we've discussed in the past that, in hindsight, grace is always crystal clear. You can see how God was moving and working in the situation, but today I'm stressed out. And today I just need to get through the day. And it doesn't always show up with a big G on his forehead and an easy button. And I just have to trust that if he did it before, he'll do it again. And that he's carried me through so many things in the past and he'll carry me through it again. But it doesn't always show up with bells and whistles and unicorns and rainbows today. So not the way I want it to. And sometimes the grace today, Carrie, is just getting through the day. Getting through the day and laying down, resting, and being able to get up tomorrow and try again. That's the grace. It may not have been the answer I was seeking today. It may not have been the solution I needed or the bit and the piece and the puzzle piece the way I can see it today. Now, by this time next week, I might be able to look back and see that it did work. But at the very moment, it's not always a thunderclap.
Yeah. Yes. And I love what you just said, that it's sufficient for this day.
Yeah.
And grace is way bigger. So to your point, the grace that I receive in this day may look like loss or tragedy or I don't understand. However, when it's pieced together, as you look back and it's pieced together, like it was what was necessary for today to move me to the next day or to move me to the resolution. Sometimes resolution doesn't look like how I want it to look, but it always takes me to resolution.
And what a blessing.
Yeah, that is a blessing.
What a blessing. Can you imagine if you saw the full picture before it unfolded? I'm just thinking about today. On this particular day, how overwhelmed I feel with so many different things. If I knew ahead of time what the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day would bring, I'd lose my mind. There's protection and covering in the not knowing, in that discomfort of not knowing, in my control freak manner of wanting to know everything. If I was actually granted that, it would take adulting to a whole new level. And I don't think it would be sustainable for more than 24 hours.
I totally hear you when you said, what would you do if you knew all the steps ahead? I'd be balled up in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's that same, it's that scripture that says sufficient are the worries for the day, right? There's enough today to deal with today. There's enough grace to cover it today. The grace is sufficient for the worries of today. And if I had all the pieces to explain every disappointment today, to explain why I had to be late to something, to explain why that door seemingly closed, it would be a bombardment. So, the reframing for me is, even in this conversation, the grace is in not knowing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Absolutely.
and the relief of the pressure of having to know.
And really, Ebony, when have you gotten to know before you needed to know?
Never. There were times when I thought I knew. I was wrong. Every time, every single time. There were times when I tried to jump the gun and figure it out and, move more quickly. And that's just not the way it's designed. It's not supposed to be that way. How many sleepless nights have you had worrying about stuff that's going to happen or never did happen, for that matter?
Exactly. Way too many. Way too many. So grace operates in the day with
Today.
what is here in this day.
Today.
As you were talking, another thing that came to mind is I'm not the woman who's going to be addressing 2 days from now or 3 days from now
Mm-hmm.
or a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that I should know what it's going to look like or even be prepared for what it's going to look like or what's going to show up, I get to grow in it by God's grace all the time.
That's so good. The preparation. That's the grace.
Yeah.
From day to day, I excuse me, what was coming to mind, I applied for a job some years ago. Went through several steps and was pretty confident I was going to get it. And at the very last minute, the recruiter called and said, "We're not able to select you. We had to go in a different direction." It was a very kind no thank you. But it was a no thank you nonetheless. And I had put all my eggs in this basket and I was fairly certain. And then, I didn't get it. So about maybe 8 or 9 weeks later, that company filed for bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And within weeks, they laid everyone off. At the time, it looked like a closed door. It was disappointing, was let down. And I couldn't figure out why or how. What did I do? What did I do? The grace was the protection from the fact that I would have been completely unemployed within 2 months.
Yeah.
Didn't look like grace that day.
I'm sure you weren't associating grace with it at all.
I did not say thank you, God, for turning me to I didn't pray that prayer. It didn't happen. And there's so many examples, the hindsight. You look back and you go, wow. Wow, 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 wow. And the preparation that came out of that was lean not into your own understanding, Ebony. In all thy ways acknowledge him and trust him. There were so many things that just came to mind, and it's a reminder for the next time the door seems to close. The prayer seems to be unanswered. There's some grace in here. I don't see it. When you bake a cake, and I don't bake cakes, but I've seen people do it. You put all the ingredients in. I don't necessarily taste the egg. I don't necessarily taste all the things, all the preparation, the
Baking soda.
sifting. I don't taste it, but the cake is good. The cake is real good at the end of the day. But there's a lot more in that cake than what I see in the end product. And I just trust that this cake that's being baked, this thing that's being cooked up and prepared, all of these different ingredients, including disappointment, including closed doors, including some sleepless nights, the end product is going to be beautiful. And it's going to taste good.
Yes. And I love that idea of baking a cake and that all the ingredients, like it's how they're all placed together.
Mm-hmm.
But once you put them in this baking pan or bundt pan or whatever kind of cake, then you stick it in the oven and you shut the door
And you leave it.
And you have nothing to do with it cooking. However, if I put a cake in the oven and I set the timer, like I'm confident that there's going to be a cake that comes out that I'm going to like to eat most of the time. And I don't worry about, I wonder if the degrees are perfectly and has it risen 1 inch? And like, I trust the process.
Absolutely. Two things just came to mind. My mom would bake cakes. You have to do it in a certain sequence. You have to, there has to be the butter coming to room temperature. You have to sift. You have to mix the butter with the sugar before you do this and before you do that. There were so many things to make that cake come out perfectly. So the sequence and timing is very important. The second thing that came to mind, she would tell us, don't go open the oven door.
Yes. Yes.
And don't go running and stumping and playing around the kitchen.
You're going to drop. The cake's going to drop.
The cake's going to drop. So once you put it in there, you've prepared it, you've done everything, and you followed all the right steps. You put it in there and you let it do its thing, and you don't disturb it because it's going to do what it's supposed to do, and it's going to have its perfect work. And I don't know why we're talking about cakes, but it fits, right? It works. Like it's an illustration, it's a metaphor for how something in life, you don't know if you're being in the sifted stage, you don't know if it's what ingredient this is, you don't know. Just have to trust it.
Absolutely. And I love, don't open the door. Like, don't go poking your own stuff in there. And don't jump around and tell it to hurry up. It doesn't work that way. So let me ask you this from the cake perspective. Now I'm hungry, but
now you want a pound cake, don't you?
You put the cake in. Can you think of an experience or a time where like you knew it was all bigger than you, the cake had been put in the oven, and your job was to get the heck away from the stove until the timer went off?
Oh my goodness, there's been so many times when I knew it, but I didn't do it. But there have been times when I've just been so at my wit's end that the only thing I could do was be still. When you just don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what to do. You don't know what to pray. Every word in your vocabulary escapes you. And in those moments, it's a be still and know that this is working out. Here's the thing. I'm not suggesting that you wait until you're at your wit's end or that you wait until you're at this corner in your life and you can't do anything else. I could have made the choice in so many other situations to be still. And it would have saved me a lot of restlessness.
You know what one of my favorite prayers is these days? Is I get to a point where it's like, okay, have I done all I can do right now? And then I pray, like, Lord, please let me know if there's something else I can do. I can't see it right now, So I'm going to wait and I'm going to ask you to light it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know you and I both like this song, Wait on You.
Yeah.
You know, they that wait will renew their strength. It's so hard to wait.
You know, it is difficult to wait, but I'll tell you, when I have friends who also learn how to wait,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just calling them up. I'm in the hall. The cake's in the oven. I'm going to be calling you now. Ebony,
The
the
cake is in the
cake is
oven.
in the oven.
It's cooking. It's cooking.
Exactly.
And sometimes I didn't have a timer on my stove growing up. So you just had to watch the clock.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I wasn't real good at that. But there's not always a timer. You don't know how long that process is going to take.
You know, my grandmother, she was a fabulous baker. God bless her. She didn't have a timer either, and she didn't look at the clock. You know how she did it? By the way it smelled.
Ha! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you use an alarm clock?
On a good day, no.
On a good day, no.
I have an old school, not my phone alarm clock.
Okay. I do not use alarm clocks.
Yes.
I've never used an alarm clock. Now, some would say that's pretty ridiculous because you're not allowing yourself to fully rest if you're constantly on this chronological time internal clock. I've never needed one. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to stop using all alarm clocks in my life. I've never used one. My body just wakes up at the time it's supposed to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's the same time every day for work or if it's for a flight. I'm just going to wake up. And I'm so confident in that I don't even question it. Now, when I travel with other people to ease their minds, I tell them to set one. Because I know it only takes me 30 minutes. It might take you an hour, hour and a half. So I don't need it, but you might need it. But if I could figure out a way to have that same trust and confidence in God's timing, I know that I'm going to be on time for whatever it is in life. I'm not going to miss it. And I can't figure out for the life of me, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, how I can be so confident that every single day I'm going to wake up in time for my first meeting, which is not the same time every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't have that same confidence and comfort in God's timing, which is certainly more reliable than my internal clock.
Well, I'm going to turn that around and say, if you can have that confidence, if you have the capacity to have that confidence in your internal clock, then you absolutely have the capacity to have that same confidence in God's timing.
The capacity, yes, I need the will.
That I can't help you with.
I need the will. And I just thought about this while we're talking. Like, I never think to myself, oh my God, I'm going to be late to work. Never. I never think it. And it doesn't matter if I get in bed at 10, 11, 12, or 1. I know I'm going to wake up no later than 8. I know that. And I'm going to have a warning wake up around 6:30. I look at the clock and I lay back down. And I know I'm going to wake up again in about an hour, hour and a half. And without fail, I've never missed a flight. I've never been late to work. It happens. And boy, if I could just put that same amount of confidence in something so much bigger than me, so much more reliable, who's never failed me ever, 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 wouldn't that be awesome? I think I just went in a different direction, but it just hit me. Like I felt that. Like, oh, wow.
Well, I'm going to try it. I like it. Why not? Why not?
Hmm. Let the cake bake.
Yeah, your time, not mine.
What do you do during those times when grace doesn't feel good? You know in your mind grace is working, but it doesn't feel like it.
Well, sometimes it doesn't, I don't know it. I don't know grace is working. It has left, that idea has left the building. And often that comes when something occurs where I have this perception that there is great loss happening. It can be loss of a relationship. It can be loss of a dream. It can be loss of an expectation or a disappointment. It can be loss of anything, but something I feel is getting taken from me. My first reaction is not to say, well, grace must be at work. My first reaction often is fear or anger. Those are the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but today, I know that that's my first reaction, and that there's something to do after that reaction. Like there's more. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to stay there. So I allow myself to have the reaction because it helps. And then the biggest question is, how can I be grateful for this? And for me, that opens the door to grace.
How long does it take you to make that transition?
These days, because it's a regular practice for me, it could be less than 24 hours. Sometimes it can be 20 minutes. Obviously, these are different, you know, I'd say sizes, at least different importance to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been a regular practice for over 10 years. And what I find is it doesn't have to be a big reason to be grateful. And it's more effective if what I'm grateful for, if I like, say I don't get the job that I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Instead of trying to find something to be grateful for of what it's not, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's being grateful for what is, something about it that is.
You have an
Like,
example?
yeah, so um man, I can't think of. So I have a loss of a very important relationship in my life right now. It's a
Mm-hmm.
loss, a perceived loss. It's pretty clear it's a loss. And how can I be grateful for that? Well, I can say, well, at least it's not, uh, we're going to have to edit this, Ebony. I'm like way too deep in this part.
No, it's fine.
So my gratitude can look like, well, at least it's not this. At least this didn't happen there, right? At least it didn't get this bad. At least I didn't say this, right? But the true gratitude is in the positive of what it is.
Mhm.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I learned a lot. I'm grateful that I put my all into it. I'm grateful that I was wide open and vulnerable. I'm grateful that I still have faith that these kind of relationships are possible.
I hear you. I'm grateful that it didn't destroy me.
Yes. So
I
how
tell
do you,
myself that sometimes.
okay, so when you say I'm grateful it didn't destroy me, can you turn that into a positive?
I'm grateful that I still have joy.
Yes.
I'm grateful that when the phone rings, I can still be happy and have a conversation. I'm grateful that I'm not so overwhelmed that it took my smile.
Yes.
It hardened my heart. And I have an example, Carrie. Throughout my health stuff in the past year, there were a lot of no's. There were a lot of, and I was praying for healing and healing and healing and healing, and it wasn't happening on my timeline. And I got to the point where I was grateful that my heart was still tender.
Yes. Yes.
I'm grateful that the Lord is healing my heart while my body catches up. I'm grateful that He's renewing my mind while all the rest of this other stuff is running amok.
Yes.
It catches
Yes.
up. So I'm grateful for the healing that looks a little different than what I want,
Yes.
but there's not destruction happening other places, you know? And I didn't always see it in the moment. And in looking back, not just in the last year, and looking back over the past however long I've been alive, there were times during life where I felt cold and emotionless and I'd kind of shut down. And I might have had a better state of physical health, but my spirit was dying and my soul felt heavy and I couldn't respond in emotion and I couldn't empathize. And so during this recent situation, it comes to mind where God was healing my heart from years and years and years of emotional cancer, from years and years and years of the world having its way with my heart. And He was fixing that and preparing me so that when He healed my body, I'd be in a place to receive it and take care of it and be a good steward of it and show up with so much gratitude that the next wind won't knock me over. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Grace knows what it's doing.
And it doesn't look like it at the time sometimes.
No, it doesn't. It
I
doesn't.
felt so sensitive. I would make jokes. And you've probably heard me say this. They took my stomach, but they put in so many extra emotions.
Yeah.
It's like it was a transplant. They took the organ and then they put in a bunch of feelings.
You got squishy.
What happened? Why am I so soft? You know, why is this Animal Planet special wrecking my day? And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because now I can feel stuff and empathize and I'm approachable more and I'm not cold. And I can hear the Lord because I'm not shut off and resentful and the healing that I really needed was happening the entire time. And it continues to happen daily. And for that, I'm grateful. So to your question on how can I be grateful for this? I can be grateful that something else is happening. And I might be able to put words to it until next week or next year. But he's doing something else.
Still in the oven, honey.
Still in the oven. It's still in the oven.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that question, how can I be grateful for it when I'm suffering, when I think I'm suffering a loss, to be able to say, how can I be grateful for it? I might catch a glimpse of what grace is doing,
Mm-hmm.
or at least be open that there is something going on and I just have to wait.
Mm-hmm. I just have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And what feels like a loss today, later on, you might look back and say, man, I learned so much.
It's a gift.
It's what you
Yeah.
said earlier. You're not the person today that you're going to be a year from now. You need all that stuff to happen, all those ingredients to sift and come together in their right sequence, in their right time, on the right day to make the Carrie who needs to be here in August of 2023.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, Ebony? Today, all the ingredients feel like they're in the Cuisinart. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. You know, I really, really like my food processor. You know, I'm not a real big fan of raw cilantro, but once I put that stuff in there with parsley and it makes chimichurri, it's a whole different thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that do the noise again. That right there. That violent shaking and blending. Man, those are some good smoothies at the end of the day. That stuff tastes a whole lot better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think I'm inviting you, but I'm speaking for myself. Let's be comfortable in the Cuisinart.
Yeah. You gotta get comfortable, not because it feels good, but because you know there's something else on the other side of this.
Absolutely. There's something bigger at work.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't negate how I feel. It doesn't negate that I'm sad and I'm mad and I'm frustrated. It doesn't mean I'm not allowed to feel those things, but that doesn't have to be all of it.
You're absolutely right.
You know, grace allows me to laugh and cry at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
for that, I am truly grateful.
That is the truth right there. One other thing just came to mind, Carrie. Talk about my mom baking these cakes. She was a caterer. My mom was also diabetic and she didn't eat cake. And I say this because the cake wasn't for her.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you go through things, it's not for you. It's not for you. Somebody else needs to see the grace on your life. Somebody else needs to know that you can go through this process. Somebody else needs to be blessed by your resilience and your encouragement. You don't know what the ripple effects are of what you're experiencing and what you're perceiving as a loss. For you, it's a loss. It's uncomfortable. It feels terrible. But you know you're going to get through it. There's somebody else watching you or listening who doesn't feel like they're going to get through it. And maybe they need to hear your story or my story to know that it's possible. Because God doesn't play favorites.
No.
If he did it for you, he'll do it for me. If he did it before, he'll do it again. So I don't know why I just thought about that. She didn't eat cake.
I love it. I love
She
it.
got one of us come taste it.
And you're absolute. I love that you said that, because it's not, grace often uses us as the message.
The vessel.
Yes.
And are you willing?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you willing to say, hey, use me?
I am.
Use me.
Are you?
I am. I've prayed that prayer. I've regretted it at times.
I'm
If I'm being totally honest with you. There have been moments when I thought, now, wait a minute. We're taking it too far.
Careful what you ask for.
Who's this for? because I'm not sure that I signed up for this. But the truth of the matter is, yes, I'm willing.
Yeah.
I'm willing. If it's going to help somebody, if it's going to, because I need that same kind of grace when I'm in my rut and I can't see through. I need to be able to look at Carrie's life or call Carrie and say, "Hey, what's in your oven today? I need some help."
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Absolutely. And me too. I mean, I I only know how to do a lot of the things that I've learned how to do because I've watched others do them
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard other stories. And when I was, you know, uh, at my wit's end, I saw somebody who had had a similar experience who had more information than I did. They had
Mm-hmm.
a tool I didn't have.
That is the truth. That is the truth. When I think about the things Jesus had to endure, Jesus didn't need nobody to teach him lessons. None of it was for him.
Yeah.
It was so we could look back and say, "Hey, man, he was lonely too."
Yeah.
On a very human level, he felt that too. So if my prayer is to be used and to be a vessel, it seems logical, which is dangerous, but it seems logical that there's going to be some stuff that's bigger than me. A lot of stuff. It's not just for me, which kind of gives me the gasoline and the fuel to keep going
Mm-hmm.
because it's bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger. It's going to work together for my good too, but it's bigger.
Absolutely.
We just did a whole podcast on cakes. The grace cake.
We did. The grace cake.
The grace cake.
Well, I think we did well with the grace cake. You have any final thoughts?
You beat me to it. My final thought is hang in there, my sister. Hang in there. That loss today is going to be a gain. You can trust that with everything in you.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Be still. It's in the oven. It's in the oven. The right ingredients are in the cake. It's baking. Wait for it.
Gonna be tasty when it comes out.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it comes out, Carrie, you don't know what it tastes like until you cut it.
That's true.
It still has to rest a little while. So there's no timeline here. There's no rush. So
Uh-uh.
even when it comes out the oven, there's sometimes still a waiting period. There's still a haul. It has to rest.
Too hot.
Oh, it's too hot. You're too close to it.
So not only do you have to wait, but you gotta step back.
Step back and let it rest. So while it's resting, you rest. You rest in knowing that it's gonna work out. And that first slice is gonna be delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Just wait for the grace cake.
I'm waiting.
Final thoughts, Carrie Adcock.
Um, I think you're so good at the final thoughts, Ebony. I love the idea. It really, the final thoughts. I guess Buster has some final thoughts too.
Yeah, Buster
Can
wants
you
to join
hear
the
him?
podcast. Yes.
Final thoughts that, Grace has many different faces. And I really love the idea that the grace in this day, I cannot see the whole picture.
Mhm.
And so I have to trust that I'm being prepared, I'm being protected, and that it is enough, it is sufficient for this day and the worries of this day. And to sit in this day. Yeah. No, that's what I got.
I like it. I like it. Let's do it again.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Grace out.
Grace out.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you, and share it with a friend. Also, please be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. We hope you're leaving with another pointer to grace, a new perspective that will light it up in your own life. Until next time, be well, be bold, be kind to yourself, and be on the lookout.